This is one of the reasons that Trump's numbers are starting to fall, and where the objective reality kicks in is that people know that the tariffs are Trump's. People know that the Iran war is Trump's. They don't think it's Congress. They don't think it's somebody else. They know Trump is doing it, that he made the call to do it, and that it is raising their prices, and that is what they are mad about.
Hi there, everyone. This week's guest had me at hello. She's the emotional and intellectual lifeline to the pro-democracy movement for any and every ex-Republican looking to migrate or land on the right side of history. She's also the most important human for any Democratic politician to know and learn from if that politician wants to build an enduring and winning coalition. She's the publisher of The Bulwark, the author of a new book coming in September, How to Eat an Elephant, One Voter at a Time. She hosts the podcast, The Focus Group, and The Illegal News. She is my spirit animal. This is the Best People podcast, and this is Sarah Longwell. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. And thank you for having read the book.
You know, we can't get enough of what you know about what voters think. And I feel like I've wish casted what you're excavating, right? I've wanted voters to see reality and see the truth. And I wanted it probably too urgently to wait for it. But I feel like what you're investigating and unearthing is this sort of arc of Trump's sort of betrayal of his base. And I feel like that's as good a place as any to start.
Yeah, Nicole, I wonder, our journeys, I think, maybe line up similarly in that both of us came from Republican backgrounds. But when Trump came on the scene, I was immediately like, no, this
Me
is
too.
absolutely not. And the reason wasn't policy related. It was sort of first principles related. It was like, this guy's a bad guy. He's a bad person. And he treats people poorly, and he doesn't understand the American experiment or what we're doing here. He's hostile to American values and liberal democracy. And so I was kind of out from the jump, but I realized not only that voters were not out, obviously, like after the 2016 election, I was going like solving a mystery. Like I had two things going on. One, I wanted to defeat Trump. I wanted to primary him. And so I grabbed Bill Kristol. Bill Kristol and I had met, and we went on this journey of, can we primary him? And we were talking to Larry Hogan, good, centrist Republicans, moderate Republicans that we liked. I even talked to Kinzinger at the time. And we're running around saying, somebody's got to primary him. Somebody's got to save the Republican Party. And everybody had the same reaction, which was like, well, tell me that I can win. Tell me that I cannot embarrass myself. Tell me I could go do this and that there's an appetite for it among Republican voters. And I was so sure that there was. And so I said, okay, well, I know how to do this. I'm going to go do focus groups. I'm going to do some polls. We're going to figure out what the appetite is for an alternative to Trump. People, obviously, this is like 2017. People have to be unhappy about this. And I walked into those rooms in New Hampshire and watched those voters rocking in their chairs. And the moderator started to ask them, and you're behind like the one-way glass, and the moderator says, so how do we think Trump's doing? And immediately it's like, great, I love it. This is exactly what I wanted. And it was one of those scales fall from your eyes moment, and largely not about them, but about me. I had spent too much time in, the Heritage Foundation or Cato or any of these think tanks in Washington. And it was just like, oh, I missed this whole thing. I had no idea that people would feel this way. And that, for me, sent me on kind of an urgent mission, which was not only did I start to realize quickly that there was no primarying Trump, because this is what voters wanted, and that to do that, I was going to have to make an uncomfortable decision at the time, having worked in Republican politics my entire career, to say, okay, well, that means we have to elect a Democrat. And that led me to, how many people who consider themselves Republicans or normally vote for Republicans can we get to vote for a Democrat? And that, I started like chasing the dragon. Like I was just like, how many disaffected Republican voters can I talk to, listen to understand how we might be able to elect a Democrat? And that was the beginning of the journey. And now I can't not listen to them. Like there's just not a time where I don't have them in my ear. And I got to tell you, I think voters are like cheat code for politics. There's all these shows and all these talking heads, and everybody sits around, why is this happening? Why is this happening? If you just listen to people, they will tell you straightforwardly why this thing is happening. And sometimes it has to do with their information environment. Sometimes it has to do with their personal experiences. Sometimes it has to do with like deeply rooted identity things. But you still can get an answer to why people are making the decisions that they are, even if you don't like the decisions that they're making.
I mean, it's such a basic thing. And I mean, I'm married to a journalist, and people always say, how do you get people to tell you things? Like, people want to talk. Like,
Hmm.
how did politics and politicians lose that touch and lose the interest in listening to voters? Because that happens on both sides, right? Like, that's how Trump goes in and wins in 16. And I'm actually not convinced that he's a great listener, but he heard something primal and was able to reflect it back to the voters better than any Republican in that primary.
Well, first of all, you're right. People do not listen to voters nearly enough. I actually was shocked when I started listening to them. How, as soon as you start listening to them all the time and then you hear the analysis that's happening kind of in DC,
Makes you
you're immediately
crazy.
like, oh, wait, this is so out of, this is not connected to what voters are thinking at
Right.
all. I do think a big part of when people talk about DC as a swamp or Hollywood as the cesspool or whatever, it's less that they're swamps or whatever. They're more like they're
They're
bubbles.
bubbles.
And they have engines, right? So in Hollywood, it's culture, and in DC, it's politics, in New York, it's finance and money. But you get into these bubbles where your lives are really nice, and any
Mhm.
politician who moves here immediately, right? They're making a good salary, and people
Yep.
are paying them for speeches, and like
Yep.
they become increasingly detached in that bubble from just what it means for a person to have to go through their daily lives not thinking about politics mostly, but politics having an influence on their life in almost everything they do. How much things cost, how their schools are run, how their local government works. Like politics is everywhere, but people are experiencing it not in the way people are experiencing it in DC. And as soon as you start to like get it, that gap, disaggregate it from what happens in Washington and listen to these voters, because people are often say, have you changed your mind about things? And I've changed my mind or evolved on certain things, but there's nothing more that I think about now than how hard people's lives are. Every day, it's not even about income inequality exactly. It's just how desperately people are trying to get ahead. And it's the kind of thing people say in Washington or you hear in speeches, but it does not capture the like in and out of a person. And the thing about doing the focus groups too is now we do them on Zoom because when the pandemic hit, we started doing it on Zoom. So you're kind of in people's houses and then you can see like they've got their baby in the the square thing that holds babies. I forget what they're called. Like a playpen, a playpen. They've got like a playpen next to them. They're trying to do the focus group for the for that
Yeah.
$150, and they've got
Yeah.
the baby there, and
Yeah.
their dogs are barking. But you just see how people's lives are so different from these bubbles. The problem is that in those bubbles are where people make decisions and where people
Mhm.
tell stories or where people are making big moves on things, and they're just not connected to these average people's lives. And I have felt it has been like a revelation to live with those voices inside my head all the time because you just see how hard people are trying, want to do the right thing, want to be good people. It's not that I don't want to crap on the voters voting for Donald Trump because I'm such a nice person. I want to make sure we take them seriously. It's more like, I don't know, this does sound really hard. Like your
Yeah.
lives, and you do want to do something to help people, and you want politicians to help inspire people and help them make their lives a little bit easier. Like it does reorient your politics around individual people, which suddenly you're like, I don't know, I do see why people are mad.
What is your theory on what it will take to sort of break up this coalition? Or is it what we're covering right now, what we're watching?
Okay, so a couple things. So, first of all, the thing that Trump understood, you got to understand that Trump has figured out how to squeeze money out of desperate people for his entire career. Like
Mhm.
him being in TV didn't just create a parasocial
Mhm.
relationship
Mhm.
with a lot of America, though it did. It
Right.
also taught him what their lizard brains wanted.
Right. And how
Because
to
people,
sell. How to
yeah, and
sell
how
to
to
them.
sell it to
Yeah.
them,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's products, whether it's The Apprentice, didn't matter. He had a better bead as somebody who understood voters as consumers
Yeah.
of things because what people consume, that is those are their true desires.
It's
Like what they
and
actually
their
can get.
values. Like, what do
That's
you
right.
value? What can I get you to value? What can I get you to buy from me?
And so that was his leg up.
Yeah.
His political innovation in some way was that he both didn't have any shame and he understood how to weaponize fear and anger, right? Fear and anger are these incredibly potent emotions. And Trump first figured out how to weaponize them, and then subsequently in our politics, the algorithms have figured out
Mm.
how to accelerate them. And so we are, as a people, very scared and very angry. And Donald Trump, so a normal politician, let's say George W. Bush, after 9/11, he goes to mosques and he talks about Islam being a religion of peace. He sits down with imams to say, we're to make sure there's not discrimination, there's not backlash, right? Because he sees his role as president of the United States to lower temperatures.
Mhm.
Donald Trump does
Mhm.
not. Donald
Mhm.
Trump turns it up at every point he can where he thinks that he can extract value out of that. And so once you just sort of understand that he has that special understanding of voters that doesn't come from a political valence, that really did give him a leg up. That's the thing that he's able to do. Now, in terms of getting out of the moment, so the breakup of the coalition, there's one naturally that has nothing to do with us or like hoping that some fever breaks. And that is that there is in the Trump coalition that he's been holding together an America First wing and
Mhm.
a MAGA establishment wing. The America First wing is the Tucker Carlsons and the Marjorie Taylor Greens. And they're the ones who were saying, more in sorrow than in anger. That's how they're trying to come at this now. Trump promised America First. He was gonna center Americans because America First is not just a slogan, it is a statement of prioritization. You, Mr. and Mrs. America, you are my priority. And everything that the largesse of this country is going to be directed at you. It is not going to be directed at other people, other countries. People like that. They want to be centered. They want to be prioritized. But Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene are saying this war in Iran, all the other stuff Trump's doing, he's failing. He's losing that promise. The
Mhm.
MAGA establishment is
Who's that?
Meg Johnson, Marco
Yeah.
Rubio,
Sean Hannity.
right? This is just sort of like whatever Trump says is the thing now.
Right.
We recognize that he's got a unique power over voters, and so whatever Trump says goes, and we'll figure out how to twist ourselves into a pretzel to defend it. But there's a breakup happening there. There's a wedge happening there, and it is deeply accelerated by the war in Iran. It is accelerated by a relationship to Israel. And this is, again, one of Trump's unique powers, which is that Trump was able to sit on top of those two wings and fuse them together, right? He holds together a bunch of tensions that I think a J.D. Vance is going to have a much more difficult time doing. And that is why I think the only way you really hollow out this coalition over time, you want it to break apart, you want it to fracture, number one. Number two, you want Trump to be a failure, objectively. You know, at the end of George Bush's career, because both where the economy was and because of the wars that now people were souring on them, public opinion was turning, he left office around 32%. And I think what happened as a result of that was not only did Republicans then lose two national elections, both Mitt Romney and John McCain lost their elections to Barack Obama, who's also an extraordinarily talented politician. But by the time the Republicans came back around to a primary, all of the Marco Rubios and the Nikki Haley's, they had decided we don't want that. And not only was George W. Bush not only did it not help Jeb, it was like they were like, no, this is not even the party anymore. It's not even for you anymore. And so what you want for Trump is to leave office at 32% or below, but like so low that everybody objectively looks at Trump and says that was a failure. That was a failure.
But do you think we're capable of objective truth when it comes to an ability? I mean, like his numbers are at 33 now.
Yeah, not in the total aggregate. He stays hovering around 38% in Nate Silvers, but we are seeing more and more polls hitting that line, hitting that 32%.
Yeah. I've got
And-
AP is at 33 approve, UMass is at 33 approve, 67 disapprove.
100%. No, we're starting to see polling come out, and quality polling. That AP NORC poll is a high quality poll. That UMass poll, I know the people who run it. It's a good poll.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a while to get the entire average, I think, to come down. But at some point, if he is in those low 30s, and honestly, I think he could potentially go lower.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all because of the economy. And this is where the fundamental coalition of Trump that encompasses the MAGA establishment, America First, doesn't even really count the sort of all the swing voters who voted for Trump just because of the economy.
Right. The
And
price
that
of
was-
eggs voter. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes when we say things like price of eggs, now Trump is like, see how cheap eggs are? And I was like, it was never about eggs specifically, bro. Eggs is just a stand-in, just like your wall. Just like your wall was a stand-in for I take immigration seriously. Price of eggs is a stand-in for what do groceries cost for the average person and staple items, how high has inflation driven them up, or how high are gas prices, which, those things all, people tend to look at them as one thing. Okay, here's how much bread is, or here's how much gas is. But of course, for an average person, they fuse together like Voltron to make a catastrophic financial environment for them where they have no purchasing power. And voters, that's the number one thing people talk about. We start every focus group with the same question: how do you think things are going in the country? And you learn everything you need to know, usually in that first 25 minutes where everybody just talks, because they bring up organically the things that are on their mind. And right now, everybody does the same thing. Number one, everybody thinks the state of the country is bad, which is why right track, wrong track is so low. These guys reinforce that with their everything's terrible. And then they immediately go to how expensive things are and how the war in Iran is raising them, how tariffs are raising them. And this is one of the reasons that Trump's numbers are starting to fall, and where the objective reality kicks in is that people know that the tariffs are Trump's. People know that the Iran war is Trump's. They don't think it's Congress. They don't think it's somebody else. They know Trump is doing it, that he made the call to do it, and that it is raising their prices, and that is what they are mad about.
Let me play some of your Trump voters. You sent us some. This is Stephanie. I think she describes herself as a 3-time loser. Let's listen.
I am a 3-time loser. I voted for him 3 times. I believed in his vision. He had like this hope that he was outside of that whole DC swamp and that he was actually going to drain the swamp. Like that's what I was really hopeful for. And I feel like it's such a downward turn as soon as the Epstein files came out, which really puts this thing in my heart to think that maybe he did something bad, because it's like now, I mean, everything is going wrong after even the threat of the Epstein files. And my home base is Texas, and gas is almost $5 a gallon here, which is ridiculous. I have a real problem with my dad's a Marine. I just don't believe in losing American lives for something that has nothing to do with us, right? I'm just like, come on, guys, let's support ourselves before we start handing out money to other countries. And the price of groceries makes me want to cry.
Wow. It's everything.
It's everything. And that is how sometimes people are like, oh, okay, you cherry picked one person. So you found one person who voted for Trump 3 times. No, I promise you. And it's the reason I do the podcast that I do, is because I'm like, I don't take my word for it. Listen to the voters in their own words. And you can hear not just that's the thing they talk about. Like when you get a poll, it's like, okay, I see people care about the economy. That's the top. The focus groups allow you to hear people say, it makes me want to cry. Like it is causing me pain. I have to choose between whether I can get groceries or whether I pay for my kids to be able to participate on the soccer team. Like all day long, that's what I hear is about the trade-offs that people in this economy feel. And that's why I talked about it all the time when Joe Biden was saying, it's good. They're trying to run on sort of Bidenomics. I was like, you guys, people are so upset about how they're still feeling. I know the macroeconomy is improving, but you got to pitch it as a recovery because people do not feel good yet. And it's now, even with the partisanship where people sort of, last year, you would say this to me, right? We would be on the show and like, are people upset yet? Are people, and like, they were like, well, he's not fixing things, but Rome wasn't built in a day. We have patience, give him some time. That is not how they sound now. Now they sound like, what is he doing with Iran? What is he doing with the ballroom? Why is he focused on all this other stuff? Nothing's getting better for me.
The Epstein story and Minneapolis felt like the end of the beginning to me. With the Epstein story, it was a story, like I covered it in the first term as a heinous sex crime and a weird sort of Trump cabinet affiliation in Alex Acosta. But then I didn't cover it again until the day Elon Musk tweeted Trump's in the Epstein files. That's not like on the right, they covered it every day. Like Kash Patel, Joe Rogan, all these guys were talking about the Epstein conspiracy for the period where Trump was out of power.
How is it that my father could be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light?
Who's on the Epstein tapes, folks? Who's on those tapes? Who's in those black books? Why have they been hiding it?
What the hell are the House Republicans doing? They have the majority. You can't get the list? Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are.
It's interesting to hear it come up as context, right? Like, do you hear this thing from voters where the Epstein isn't the thing, but it's the sort of the keyhole through which they start to doubt his credibility and his truthfulness and his commitment to them?
100%. I mean, the thing about the Epstein files is that it goes directly to something that they believed about Trump.
Mhm.
They believed that Trump was not like regular politicians and that he was going to show them all of the cover-ups that the deep state has had, that there is this elite cabal. Like, one of the things I talk about in the book is I have a chapter called Conspiracy Land, because one of the things that Donald Trump has done that is different from every other leader, it's not that conspiracies are always in America. Second gunman on the grassy knoll, and is this boy actually a bat, or whatever we used to see the Inquirer say as we were in the grocery store, right? Conspiracies are always with us. We have never before had a president of the United States who is a constant pusher of conspiracies. He launched his political career by saying that President Barack Obama was a secret Kenyan Muslim socialist and he needed to produce his birth certificate. As a result, he has attracted into his coalition many, many people who
The
are
fellow
conspiracy
theorists.
theorists,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah,
are
yeah.
attracted to him because of this. And that's the Epstein thing. And so, like, you live by the conspiracies, you sort of die by the conspiracies. And so for them, it goes to a central promise he was supposed to make, which is you're going to show us the truth. You are never going to, you're not going to hide these stuff from us. That's what Donald Trump does, not like these other regular politicians. And so for
Right.
him to do it is what causes their faith in him. And another thing is people have said to me the whole time, they're like, I don't think Epstein's really going to matter. And I'm like, you're wrong. It matters so much to all of these people.
So I started listening to Joe Rogan's podcast when I started having a podcast, because a lot of people listen to him, and I wanted to understand his relationship with his audience. And what I understood immediately is that it's not a political show, but the Epstein story is one among many. Like, I listened to a whole thing on the pyramids, and I like couldn't. I had a million things to do. I'm like, I have to get. And I was in the car. I'm like, I have to get out of the fucking car. I kept driving because I'm like, where's this going? And they go nowhere. They go nowhere. Like, the thing with conspiracy content is it's endless. Like, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And like it's like perfectly understandable why it populates a podcast and why it's a conversation starter when you're the party out of power. It absolutely blows up in your face when you are handed the keys to the kingdom and you completely reject all your own promises about transparency.
Yeah, I do think part of it's not funny, haha, but it is ironic in the sense that if you look back carefully with the benefit of hindsight, you'll see Cash and Dan Bongino and all of these MAGA, even JD Vance, going on all these podcasts to hyperventilate about the Epstein stuff. But Trump himself
Never does.
doesn't, because I think that Trump just let himself get caught in the middle of this. Like, okay, they were
Correct.
out there talking about it. He did not want this Epstein. He thought when he got in there that he'd be able to just say, as he tried, who cares? No one cares about this. Epstein died. He was a bad guy. I didn't even like him. And everybody's like, no, wait a minute. You promised. And it's sort of, it's funny things about voters is they often decide that you've told them something, even if you haven't. So, like, people decided that Joe Biden told them he was going to be a one-term president. He didn't really do that, but they were sure that he had promised him that. This is the same thing. Trump didn't really promise the Epstein files, but everyone's sure that he did.
It's ironic and sad. And I think the other thing, my sense about him is that Republicans are like those sort of victims that are in a room, but they've never tried to open the door, so they don't know that it's not locked and they could walk out. I mean, the Epstein survivors are tough in a way that always confounds Trump, right? Like, he doesn't know what to do. Republicans don't stand up to him. The Democrats that do are usually individuals. It's not like a whole party that comes together and attacks him. The Epstein survivors are reflexively nonpartisan, and they've been through something so much more heinous than the political, mud pit. I wonder what you make of the role they've played in sort of getting him back on his heels.
I mean, mainly it's just that they're relentless, right? I mean, Trump is,
Yes.
like, to your point, Trump is used to being able to steamroll everybody. I mean, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, but watching the law firms,
I hate it.
the media companies, like, the universities, everybody roll over for this guy. It's like, guys, if you just did, this was what happened, right? The Wall Street Journal stands up to him, and what happens? It gets tossed. And whenever somebody
Correct.
actually stands up to him, it doesn't go his way. And so the Epstein victims are people, they don't want anything from him. They don't want to be famous. They don't want to do any of this. They just want justice for the thing that happened. They want people to admit the truth about this. This is a thing about survivors, is so much of what they just want is for, say, no, admit that this happened to me and that it was wrong. Stop gaslighting me. Stop trying to bury it. They want the dignity of being told that they were harmed. And so as a result, they just keep pushing. And he doesn't know what to do in the face of that. He doesn't know what to do in the face of good, righteous anger. He wants to get away.
Where do you think we are in the Trump story?
It's a good question. I think here's a tension between, I don't want bad things to happen to anybody. I don't want our economy to crash. I don't want us to blow up Iran. I don't want gas prices to be $6. Like, I don't want bad things to happen. But Donald Trump has made choices. And there's this other part of me that says, yeah, this is what we said would happen. Like, if you put this guy in charge, this is what we said would happen. And it is happening. He is not consulting Congress, and he is going to war. He's threatening to end civilizations. Like, this is not small stuff. He is trying to prosecute his enemies. He is focused on a ballroom instead of anything for the actual American people. It is the most corrupt administration we've ever seen in our lives. And I think because it is having negative personal consequences for people, like, there was no way to get around this. There's no way to get around that the Trump experiment only ends when people are hurt by it. And I don't wish for people to get hurt, but I do wish for people to understand the consequences of electing an authoritarian like Trump who doesn't care about them. And so over at the Bulwark, we often talk in terms of stove touching, right? Where you sort of learn the lesson of getting burned. And I've always been like, there's nothing I can actually do about this, but my hope has always been like, is there a way for people to get burned just enough that they never want to experiment with a Trump-like figure again without it doing the kind of irreparable damage as a country that sort of we can't claw our way back from? Like, is there a sweet spot in there? And I'm not—
Do you think there is?
Ideally, it would sort of be right where we are now, right? Is that Trump would continue to not know how to get out of this war that he started, and you kind of are kicking things down the road. People are increasingly angry with him. But look, because you don't want it to end with what? Violence in the streets, people flooding the street, like people, the bottom falling out of the market, having the kind of rupture economically that takes a decade to recover from. Like, there's all kinds of much worse ways it can go. And I don't want the bottom to fall out, but I do sort of want there to be just enough that people recognize that they've been sold a bill of goods and that he is not improving their lives so that they can make better choices. Regret is an incredibly good emotion. It is a healthy emotion because it's a teaching emotion. People who say they have no regrets, I'm always like, well, that's not a good, that's bad. You should have some regrets because that's how you learn to make better choices going forward. And so I think where we are right now is I'd like it to be that people lose their confidence in Trump and want to move on from him without it doing catastrophic damage.
I want to play Brian. He's one of your Trump voters from West Virginia.
I'm like really getting concerned about like the war in Iran, being in this situation where I've sold my house and I have this like lump of money that I have, set aside to build my new house. And then we go to war in Iran and the prices are just going up, but my pile of money is not getting any bigger. Like, some of the stuff that's been happening is just so shocking and like just seemingly out of nowhere to me. Like, the Venezuela situation or the war in Iran or just some of the other rhetoric. It's just really bizarre, and there's not a whole lot of good stuff happening.
I find it so, to your point, distressing to hear people's distress. And I grapple with the tension every single day. I mean, and I remember first giving voice to it when I was covering tariffs. Like, I want someone to stop the tariffs. Like, I have kids that play sports, and so like I'm at Walmart all the time, like buying new batting. Like the cost of sort of raising a family. And if you've got kids that are little and you work and you're paying for preschool, like, life is so hard that I remember grappling with this around the tariffs and wanting him to not hurt people, like to call off the tariff obsession, the tariff regime. It gives me a physical feeling of distress to hear voters grapple with that much fear that Brian had sold a house, had a pile of money, that money wasn't going to grow, right? That was the money he had to work with. And now things are getting more expensive. How does a Democrat talk to Brian in a way that doesn't leave him disgusted with all politicians, but makes him think that the Democrat will be on his side.
Well, this is why a lot of what I want to do is sort of Clockwork Orange Democrats. I want to take them, I want to sit them in the chair, and I'm like, okay, you're going to watch. You're just going to mainline 10 focus groups of people, Trump voters, independents, Democrat, whatever. We'll do Hispanics, we'll do Black voters, we'll do women, we'll do everybody. Listen to how they talk, because every single one of them is going to talk about the anxiety that comes with being able to afford the things that they want to afford, live the life they want to live, whether or not they have a job, how are they going to raise their kids. I'm actually glad, like, there now is a conversation happening around cell phones in school. That comes up all the time with parents. It's just like, and politicians don't really think about it. And everybody's in these process frustrations and conversations. And I'm like, okay, just listen to these voters and listen to what matters to them. And then, like, feel for them. I always thought one of the reasons that Obama, everyone's like, well, he's a generational political talent. And I'm like, yes, but he was an organizer on the streets of Chicago who listened to people all the time. And the second that you have regular people in front of you, and this is why I say the bubbles are so bad for people in these elite circles, is because they just don't hear the anxiety in people's voices. Because if you did, if you heard the anxiety day in and day out of people just trying to get through life, trying to afford healthcare, oh my God, the stories around people getting sick, their kids getting sick, them not being able to afford healthcare, it focuses your mind on these are the problems we need to solve. And I think if you were that politician and you listened to all these voters all the time and somebody came to you about trans sports, you wouldn't have to sit there and calculate some answer. You would be filled with righteous indignation and say, I am not going to sit here and debate with you whether or not we have to fight about trans sports for little kids when the vast majority of Americans can't afford groceries. That is a problem to solve. And you should be ashamed for distracting us with your petty conversations when so many people are in dire straits right now because of your policies. Like, I just feel like if Democrats were listening to these voters, they would feel righteous on their behalf. Because I've started to feel righteous on their behalf. Like, there is a meta conversation that is stupid about whether sort of the never Trump types that we are, whether we abandon our conservative principles because we now ally with Democrats on things. And I'm like, you know what, man? I'm so much less ideological than I used to be on this issue or that issue. That was good for when normal politics happened and we could just argue about marginal tax rates. But we live in a very different country where we are focused on the highest order of things. But also, because I listen to voters now, I just think in terms of the vast majority of Americans have the same problems. They care about the same things. Talk to Americans, address their concerns. Like, that is what politics is supposed to do. And every time I see politicians getting wrapped around the axle about nonsense, I just want to be like, why do this? Just opt out. Just say, I don't want to do that because I'm going to focus on these people. And I think they would if they were listening to voters all the time.
Who do you see out there doing it well?
Okay, so I have a couple people. But right now, I know that so much of this is about being able to say to voters, I see you, I hear you, I've got you. Like, it just is that emotional connection to people. And I believe that either somebody's going to come along who is going to feed the good parts of people, or somebody like Donald Trump will feed the worst parts of people. But see, I don't think everybody's like good or bad or stupid or smart. I think people are complex. I mean, you listen to voters enough, you're like, you guys are a weird salad of stuff. You guys have such strange contradictions in everything you do. But I also know that, like, you can pull kind of the light out of people and you can pull the darkness out of people. Trump goes for darkness all day long. Fear and anger, fear and anger, fear and anger. But I keep listening to John Ossoff, and he has this, he's kind of doing almost a cadence of a preacher of some kind. He has long pauses. And so his communication style is storytelling. It is connection. And I'm like, okay, like, now I'm starting to feel something. Like, make people feel something that isn't miserable. That's one piece. Also, look, I'm always going to be a Pete fan. I can't help it. I think that Pete Buttigieg is very sweet and very smart and dismantles people when he, like, Democrats, I do watch a lot of them. They get Republicans, you remember all these, like, straight mercenaries. And
Killers.
Democrats are so nice with their
And
good
they're so
intentions.
earnest and
And it's hard. They don't get in the ring. And Pete has it. And he never becomes a super jerk about it or whatever. He just is smarter than they are. And he'll go everywhere and he'll do that. So Pete, John Ossoff. But then there's the other side of it for me. So those are kind of two people that's maybe speak to me a little bit. I'm less share the politics of a Bernie or an AOC or a Mamdani, but I got to tell you, because they know what they believe. I'm with Democrats sometimes, and there's sort of a, what are the magic words, or how do we talk about this, or how do we say this? And I just like want to grab people by the lapels, and sometimes I do, and just say, what do you believe? What are you passionate about? What matters to you? And the reason that Mamdani and AOC and Bernie are so good at their messaging is because they believe in some things. They have these values that they believe in. And even though from a policy standpoint, they might not always resonate with me, them as people and communicators resonate with me. Like AOC is very good at getting in the ring and speaking clearly to people. She goes out and has her own audience. She doesn't need to go everywhere on other people's stuff. She's building her own audience. And
Totally.
not everybody can do that. But I do think that ability to have a parasocial relationship with voters, because they do demand it now. And it doesn't mean you create slop all the time. It doesn't mean you need to be on Instagram all the time doing it as a serious politician. But you do need to be talking to people. Donald Trump, he took every gatekeeper and he moved them aside and he talked directly to people on Twitter. And now we have to just repopulate his, Truth Social garbage. But he removed it. He removed the barrier with people because he already had kind of a parasocial relationship with them.
Right.
And
From The Apprentice.
And this is where Kamala, people are having this incredibly stupid conversation right now. Should she be more moderate? Should she be more progressive? I'm like, no voter that I was listening to was talking about whether she was sort of to this or to that. Mostly they were like, I don't know who she is. I didn't know anything about her, because they felt like she didn't talk to them and explain clearly, here's who I am. Here's exactly who I am. And so like, I just think that is what I'm looking for in the next person. It's much less, do they share my spectrum of policy choices? I care so much less about that than, are you going to help America not feel like garbage every day? Like we have to hate each other. Are you not going to live to divide us? And are you going to try to do some good things to improve people's lives?
What do you think of the 6 who've been in a fight with Donald Trump over the military? Because I feel like the best way to figure out all of these things is to be in a fight with him. And I feel like, I think Slotkin was always really strong. I feel like she's even better. I feel like Kelly, I watched him challenge Hegseth in his hearings, and I thought I'd just never seen Kelly so, sort of direct and effective as a communicator. I think Crow is really talented. And I think you and I have talked for years about how important the generals are and how important generals and military voices are to most Americans. What do you make of the 6? I guess Trump calls them the seditious 6, but the 6 who dared to say that no one in the military should follow an illegal order.
Yeah. So I have a chapter in the book called Wartime Generals. And part of this speaks directly to these types of people. Go at him. Like, it is a different moment. I do think Democrats I still hear a lot of people being like, well, you got to reach across the aisle and you got to, try to find common cause with Republicans. And that's good. Okay. But actually, what I like about those 6 is that they're finding common cause with each other in a space that they understand uniquely well. Donald Trump is a draft dodger who has never done an ounce of service for this country. And so people like them should stand up all day long, talk about their service, what they understand uniquely about it, and why Donald Trump is wrong. There's a reason that they went after them so hard. There's a reason they tried to actively prosecute them. Of course, they couldn't. Free speech. They were just quoting what was legal. Like, there's no way to get at them, so the case had to be dropped. But it was potent, and he came back at them because he knew it was potent, because he is scared of people who demonstrate character. There's a reason he needed to shit all over John McCain, because he's not a tenth of the person John McCain was. John McCain was in a torture prison camp for this country, like wouldn't leave his troops behind. Donald Trump doesn't even understand anything remotely close to that. And so he has to belittle John McCain because he doesn't want people to notice how deficient he is. And I just think people of character, it's why the silence, to me, it's always the silence is worse, is the most awful thing. Like the people who don't speak out. Anyway, I'm glad that they're speaking out. And I think they should all go harder. And honestly, any Democrat who wants to have a future political career, just as a pure rank political matter, going after Donald Trump, people are going to remember. The voters, Democratic voters right now, they don't care about whether you are going to be more progressive or more moderate. They just want to know, are you going to go fight for me? Are you going to take this guy on? Are you going to stop letting him run roughshod over us? Because that's what they want. And so every single person in that video knew that they were going to get blowback, and they did it anyway. And that is what this moment demands from people.
When you look at their ability to continue to move the Overton window, right? So I covered the Mueller probe every single day. And I think I missed, you talk about things we missed, like I missed how indifferent or how detached people felt from the rule of law. And I also missed the fact that companies and CEOs who were only gazillionaires because they're located in a country where there are laws and there are courts and there are judges, that I erroneously assumed that they would have skin in the game, that the big banks would have someone in a padded room saying, oh, we don't want to become Orban. And so when Trump did authoritarian things, people in that arena would say something. And the business community has been silent. I'm disgusted by them. I've really spent an inordinate and probably unhealthy amount of time trying to understand their silence. But on this issue of fighting, I wonder what you make of the brand damage all of the cowards are doing to their brands and themselves with their silence.
Man, this is tough because I wish I could say that they were doing more damage to themselves. Like, there's a reason that they're silent, is that every lawyer that they have is telling them don't get in the crosshairs, right? They're all
Of
they're,
who?
they're,
Of the 33% authoritarian,
no
insane
of the
president?
Trump administration. Like, this is the problem. You know, I'm here in DC, so I know lots of people who are kind of in the space, and they'll tell you, yeah, well, Trump, you know, if he turns his eye of Sauron on you and he's gonna mess with your business, everyone's like, keep your head below the parapet. Every lawyer in town, everybody in this, every comms person, they're telling people, don't put your head up, it'll get cut off. He's vindictive, he's awful, he'll come for you. And as a practical assessment, if you've got shareholders, if you're a law firm cares about business that wants to be in front of this government, all of that, that's true. It's true that it is better for business. It is better right now, objectively, for your bottom line, to keep your head down. But also, you are a coward. If they all put their heads up collectively, you could change the game. But instead, everybody is protecting their personal, bespoke whatever. And I didn't know quite how these kinds of social contagions happened. I sort of assumed better of people. The voters are one thing, people who don't have a lot of information. These are people with plenty of information. And here is the one thing that I do think Democrats should be tough on. I think that Democrats should hold some of these people who just paid off Trump and walked away. I think they should start even now. I think they should be saying to them, we're going to be back in power. And this is not how we're going to behave as a country. It makes me so angry. These are billionaires and millionaires, and they've got every resource at their disposal. They got good law firms. And what? They're not going to go stand up for James Comey. They're just going to make sure they're keeping their head down. This is how bad things happen, is by a bunch of people individually deciding they're not going to speak up.
And I think it matters when you see the voting rights case. We have changed people's right to vote in America predicated on a lie, on something Bill Barr called bullshit. And law firms being on the sideline have a consequence, right? More people will not be able to drop a mail-in ballot in a drop box. The most secure ballots in any election are always mail-in ballots. I mean, there is a damage being done to democracy for all the law firms that capitulated. And like, how is some of this stuff happening?
I mean, I can give you a real answer to that, but none of it's good. I mean, I don't have a response. Like, you're just right. You are correct that this is what's happening. It is a catastrophic moral failure on the part of elites.
Like, I hate them too. I watch your voter groups and I'm like, yeah. Like, I understand why no one trusts anyone in power.
That's exactly right. I think there's been some evolution. And I think in the very beginning of Trump, as you saw him coming to sort of tear down norms and values and institutions, there's this part of you that wants to defend the institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And there are still institutions that I think are very important to uphold. But I'm like, institutions, they can't protect themselves. Like, they are people, and these people are not protecting their own institutions, and they're not protecting the institutions that protect them. This is your point about without the rule of law. There's an economic term around trust, like trust in economics, knowing that that America will be an honest broker, that we will pay our loans back. Like, all of those things require trust. Our economy runs on it. And so for these elites who have so much to basically abdicate the responsibility to stand up for the things that undergird their success, that give them the largesse that they have, has just been one of the saddest things that I've ever seen. And it makes me not blame voters
Right.
for wanting for having like pitchfork feelings about
Totally.
elites, which doesn't mean I am firmly against any of the sort of like let's condone political violence because that's illiberal. That's illiberal. It's below the line. It's not okay. But I understand people, their anger at elites, and certainly in this moment, elites are earning it by having no higher sense of duty to the country and only to their own bottom lines. And I'm a capitalist, but that is not how it's supposed to. Like it's a reciprocal arrangement, capitalism. Like you have an obligation to be a good, honest broker and to protect the institutions that undergird the value of your companies. And if you abdicate that, they shut us down, or our credit rating gets, whatever. There's a million consequences, and if they come to roost, they will have earned them.
What is the Sarah Longwell sauce that makes, everything you've touched in this moment such a success?
I do think that the watchword authenticity is a thing that people throw around. But I do think in a moment of collapsing trust, the thing that the Bulwark has provided has been both, hey, we're going to be honest with you about our journey, where we come from, who we were, what our worldviews were, how they're changing as a result of Trump. We don't just have an audience, we have a community. They talk back to us. We are in community with them. I mean, we make most of our stuff free because you can't save democracy from behind a paywall.
Correct.
But they get to be inside the community. And I think being honest with people and trying to communicate with them all the time is a big part of the moment. And so like a lot of the lessons I've learned from the Bulwark, I can sort of take to politics. So one of them is, to build a community, you have to be a community. And I think that one of the reasons people develop a parasocial relationship with us is because they can tell we fight all the time. JVL and I don't agree. Tim Miller and I don't agree. Bill Kristol. We all have the only thing we all are together is super pro-democracy. We believe in the higher order things. But we disagree on all kinds of things and we fight it out. And the audience likes that. They participate that. They understand each of us. But it's a pretty sticky thing when you have an audience. And so we have focused on that community element, nurturing that and trying to never be audience captured, but also never be sort of bullied into saying anything that we don't believe to be true by the context of the moment. And so I think that has bought us a lot of trust in a low trust time.
What do you see in the media? I mean, I say this all the time. I don't have any awareness really of what's happening in other cable networks because I know where my audience is pulled to. They're curating sort of news and information that's largely sort of pro-democracy and that is a heavier mix of independent media than I think legacy media. And I wonder what your sort of take on the media is at this moment.
I mean, look, there's no doubt that there's a massive fracturing going on in mainstream media, and much of it is to our detriment as a society. I think that more paywalled stuff, if you've got to pay to get really good journalism, that's tough. I think none of us can do what we do as sort of independent media without the shoe leather journalism, the news gathering that happens at real media companies. And so I don't want to see them go away. I don't want to compete with them. I don't want to even benefit from their fragmentation, but I do recognize how much fragmentation is happening. And I'm in constant build mode. I just see like the Washington Post, right? All of those good journalists lost their job. We should build new things out of them. But I'll tell you, obviously I do your show a lot, and I do your show more than any other show because you have a couple things like that I think a lot of other people don't. One is you create community on your show. You have you bring the same people back for conversations that can extend so people know them. And so it feels comfortable. Like this is the Nicole Wallace cinematic universe. People who recognize me out in the world, they're either Bulwark fans or they're your fans. Like those are the two kinds that really, they like know that we're on your show. You know how to talk to people. They can feel you. They know that you care about the things that you're talking about. And it is that is the sauce. Like you have it, which is obviously you have it. You have a big TV show. You don't need me to tell you that. But
you're making me cry. I've spent the whole week on the verge of tears and you're making me cry here. I love the audience. Like I remember the morning after the election, I was like, fuck, like not like I have to go to work. I get to go to work. Like this is my job. It's ridiculous. But like, who is going to turn on the TV today? And I saw this. I had one short, ill-fated season on The View, but I saw the way Whoopi Goldberg interacted with every viewer of The View. She treated the View viewers with such reverence and love and tenderness and gratitude that like anyone that turns it on is going to get like whatever the best I have to offer is. But I also, though, have struggled every day over the last 15 months with like how, we can't. I don't want to be overly optimistic. Like in your view, how does this end?
So this is the thing: is most things don't have a direct start point or an end point. In some ways, Trump has a little bit of a start point until he came down the escalator, or whatever. We all remember that, but it was before that. He's had a long journey, and so look, I do think the Trump. A lot of it happened. Like, what happens to Trump? Does Trump? He's an old man. Does the actuarial table get him, or is he have his hands and his grip on the Republican Party for the foreseeable future as he ages like one of these weird dictators in a Latin American country, that
Totally.
just like hangs on and continues to lord over things? Maybe. So I don't know where it ends, but I will tell you the best outcome is that Trump leaves office, and I could just put a period there, that Trump leaves office having cratered as a failed experiment. Because from that flows everything. From there flows Don Jr. and Eric's ability to have continuing influence over our politics, because they're making millions and millions of dollars. Like Elon's brand needs to be tainted by Trump. Like the entire Trump thing, these social media people that propped him up, the law firms that capitulated to him. Trump's failure, catastrophic failure as a political figure, that should taint everybody who propped him up. And like, that's the best outcome, that we can look and say, no, you failed America when we needed you. And that they pay for that with a certain amount of shame going forward. That forces the society to recalibrate around better things. And I think why having good politicians come up, the Democratic Party just is the organizing vehicle for the pro-democracy coalition, which means it's going to be big and multifaceted and weird and have a lot of strange bedfellows. I'm looking forward to the Democratic primary, because my hope is that somebody fierce and kind is able to like feed the good parts in people and bring us up from there.
Fierce and kind. Would that ever be you? Would you ever throw in and run for office?
I think there's an audience for us, a good audience for those of us who are lapsed Republicans. I'm not sure they're electing us president of their party yet. I think that might be a stretch, but I don't know. I'll continue to try to figure out where I can do the most amount of, have positive influence. That's all I want to do.
We appreciate you so much. I love getting to talk to you today. More,
Same.
please.
Same.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.